All right, we are live. Matthew, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good, Sonny. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So we've got an interesting topic to cover today, making buildings programmable. Matthew, maybe tell us a little bit about, I guess, your company, and then we can back into your story. I'd love to start kind of from the beginning and take it from there.
Yes, there's certainly a lot to unpack with a title like Making Buildings Programmable, because at the
Yes.
surface level, that doesn't make any sense. Buildings don't move, they don't do things on their own. But we're entering an era where that's actually going to be the case. As buildings exist beyond the physical reality, and we start looking at the data around them, the context, the personality, and the purpose of buildings, they actually can operate a little bit on their own, which means that their motions are going to be programmatic. And it's a wild journey how I've gotten here. This seems like a rabbit hole or some sort of conspiracy theory honestly, but it's quite a visionary role that I've taken on because I noticed this is certainly where every industry is going. I mean, let's just take something like artificial intelligence, which is starting to give personality to things like software or documents, where now the way that we communicate with information around us has personality, tidbits of reusable attributes that we pick up on. Like we like the way that something is phrased. You like the way that Claude reads to you versus ChatGPT. Not to distract from the point here. So real estate becoming programmable, it's really this crux of the built environment, everything around us that people create. And we've started weaving different technologies into it, hardware, software. You can think about even a thermostat. I'll give an example with a smart thermostat. Imagine that it started to predict when you were coming home, it starts warming up the house. Imagine if it was more stubborn. Imagine if it was more intuitive. Now expand that across a really big property where it starts to identify where things are going wrong, and it says to you, Sonny, I think there's a problem on the fourth floor. This just broke. Can you send in the maintenance crew? And perhaps it even orders maintenance on its own. That's where real estate starts to become programmable. It starts to adopt personalities. That's where we've identified that cities are going. It's inevitable if we start weaving AI into our buildings. But I didn't start here. Okay, I started a much simpler, which was in the investment space 6 years ago. I was getting out of day trading and capital markets, and I was getting into real estate. I wanted to make real estate investment more accessible. So I put together a marketplace where people could look at different commercial properties and buy fractions of those. It was challenging, to say the least. One, you're a startup. Two, you're a marketplace. And so you have to find all sorts of investors and you have to push them towards deals to raise capital. After some deals went unfulfilled, I recognized that there's a bigger issue here. Real estate in general has problems. It has opacity issues. It has trust issues. It's held together by shoestring and bubble gum. And so I pivoted, and 2 years ago, I founded my current company where I'm president and CEO, called Building Inc., which is www.building.inc. Pricey domain, but it is well worth it and really encompasses what we want to accomplish in the future. And we've taken on the responsibility to help organize, verify, and deliver property data between stakeholders, which are highly fragmented, across time where information gets lost, so that we know more about the buildings around us, whether that's a house or a commercial property or an urban layout. We want to be able to make decisions about those. We want to be able to find trends. And then we also want to be able to establish trust, whether that's between an insurance company and a property, a current owner and the next buyer. How do we establish that credibility? And especially in a digital format, if I send you a file, how do you know the file's good? So that's what we help out with these property owners. There's some downstream use cases we might get into on the investment side, but I mean, smart cities, AI, personalities in buildings, it gets wrapped up because whether we like it or not, and this is something I've been really diving into, there's an agentic future before us, which is that artificial intelligence is going to be operating independently. And so if we're using AI in our platforms, in our investment portfolios, in our properties, it's going to have some sort of personality. And I think the examples I used before were a little off the cuff, like a thermostat that's stubborn. That's kind of a stupid example. So I'll reframe. Maybe your investor agent has more of a Warren Buffett mentality, which means when the market is receding, you actually start buying. You're buying the dip and getting ready for the future. Not every agent is going to operate that way. Some people are going to program the personality to be along the lines of, when things are going down, start selling, right? Abandon ship. That's the concept. Now apply it to properties. That's something that we're looking at down the road. But I just wanted to set the table. Here's me. I started in real estate investment. I'm in the built environments and talking about construction operations as well as tech, and how all of this crazy stuff is going to fuse in the next 100 years.
So you've got this vision for smart cities. Can you just talk a little bit more about that? What is like, what does life look like? I don't know, 10, 15 years out, where we've got like AI and blockchain powering buildings, and yeah, just maybe take us through that a little bit. It's very interesting.
I have a vision for smarter cities. When people think
Hmm.
of smart cities, they think capital S, capital C, you're going to live in a box and eat bugs. And so I'm really careful about the smart cities concept. Of course, my LinkedIn says smart cities in general, but I love smarter cities. This is something that I think here in the US, we've struggled with. There's a lot of bad incentives, and there's a lot of reasons for people to develop poorly. And so the end users of a city, the people who live there, end up with dumb decisions that affect the quality of life. That's the first thing I want to fix. Can we just do better with real estate itself and urban planning before we jump to technology? And then as we start to infuse different technologies that should increase the efficiency of cities, the accessibility, the quality of life for the end user, then if we can adopt that technology responsibly, then I think that we've hit that inflection point of, okay, our cities are classified as smart. I got the opportunity to travel all over the world in 2025, and I have a lot of locations in 2026. And so I got to see cities that were not so smart and cities that were really well done. And people take pride in that. And they use also a mixture of different technologies, whether that's building practices or conveniently placed sensors that are going to help orchestrate the traffic. We're going to see more of that, and it's going to become more robust. We just have to make sure that it benefits the end user. And so that's what I want to see over the next 15 to 20 years as new technologies emerge in our cities. And we say, okay, buildings are going to be orchestrated somewhere. They're going to have AI. There's going to be blockchain for transparency and all these sorts of different platforms, or digital twins is a huge component. We know that the technology is coming. I want to make sure we're having conversations about how to adopt it responsibly. We don't want surveillance state. We have to avoid that. As soon as you start using technology to make quality of life for people in cities worse, you're doing it wrong. That's a dumber city, right? Because people don't want to live there. People don't enjoy it. It makes life worse. So really focusing on, let's not mistake innovation for progress or vice versa. Let's be really careful about how we move forward. And if I am going to have a personality infused agent in a building, is there a really good use case for doing that? Some justification, and what are the consequences, good or bad, of doing so?
Yeah, fascinating, interesting. So you've taken a very, I'd say, specific position on why prop tech and Web3 haven't taken off in real estate despite years of hype. Can you unpack that for us a little bit?
Certainly. The incentives aren't there. A lot of technology is really expensive, and then people say, how is it going to make the property better or the end user better? And they can't always come up with a reason. And to be honest, that's when I talk about the visionary future of cities and all the different ways that tech is going to be woven in there. The reason why that's so visionary is because a lot of it is kind of silly and science fiction. We haven't justified a reason to weave artificial intelligence into every single building yet. However, my job has been identifying where we could do that and how it does benefit people or portfolios, or just sets society on a better path. 50 years from now, 100 years from now, could civilization be better off because we designed something better in the first place and we governed it, we managed it responsibly and proactively so that the next generations could enjoy it? A lot of prop tech solutions don't really think like that. They exist because it's cool, it's a novelty. And I think that this is very short-sighted. It's great. Again, it's mistaking all innovation for progress to say that if we create something new, it immediately makes the product or the world better. And that's just not the case. So the way that I have led building is starting with the customer and identifying really critical problems. And we certainly found some around data, because data becomes information and information is how people make decisions. So if we don't have data, critical data about the world around us, things start to fall apart. I wanted to address that, and I wanted to develop a prop tech solution that was, in its absence, very costly to the world. And people, I mean, there's real detriment that happens when we don't take care of buildings or when we can't make decisions, whether that's investment loss or loss of life because something falls apart. So I wanted to address that, and then plug in different technologies that I think had potential, but were not being used appropriately yet. Blockchain is a really great example of that, where it's more widespread. A lot of people are familiar with that word, but they might conflate it with all sorts of cryptocurrencies or NFTs and just stop there. They don't think beyond, they don't go back to first principles and say, well, it's really supposed to be a peer-to-peer ledger where we have this trustless interaction. I took the first principles and I said, well, where else do we need trustless interactions? Definitely the built environment, where there's all sorts of mistrust and there's manipulation and there's opacity. And again, when you don't have that data, you don't have information, you can't make decisions. So one person's opt for opacity, like they don't want to disclose information, could lead to a building being poorly maintained that hurts someone later. So I really saw this opportunity for blockchain to add situational transparency. And I say situational because if we were talking about zero knowledge proofs, that means that the underlying data might still be protected, trade secrets, intellectual property, but we can see on a public ledger that it's been verified. So you have that, maybe situational is not the right word, but not 100% transparency, but certainly 100% trust in the information that we're dealing with. It's an important differentiation, but that level of confidence in the world that we're dealing with, that's been my go-to. Let's apply that. And then same thing with artificial intelligence. Although we could talk about AI in buildings or all the crazy generative AI stuff, I've taken a step back. I've tried to stay out of the bubble that's happening and just say, what are like monotonous tasks that people are doing that we could start to automate with a little bit of machine learning, and then eventually AI on top of that, and make the business better. That seems to be why we're successful.
Do you see robots building these smart cities in the future? Or do you think that's like a far off sci-fi Hollywood thing?
It's not too far off. It's already happening in small instances. I think if anything, where it's going to happen first is China. They are very far ahead in robotics and manufacturing of that sort. The US, we talk about it. We will put robots on stages to attract venture capital and private equity, and then we don't really accomplish a whole lot with it. So if we look at China and the trends that are occurring there, they are using robots in high risk situations, scenarios where a typical worker might get hurt. And this goes back to, where do we want to apply technology responsibly? Are you making robots to replace the workforce? Are you making robots to prevent people from getting hurt? And I think that those are really good instances. So we'll see more in the built environment. The stakes can be pretty high. People get hurt all the time. Stuff goes wrong. And so it makes sense to see all sorts of different robots or robotics being applied throughout the built environment, especially as we build buildings. I don't know yet about maintaining buildings. China has a few more examples in this instance. There's now robot janitors. They know how to open the doors. They will detect uncleanliness and then go about cleaning that. They've replaced the door service in hotels with robots as well. It'll take the elevator right up to your floor and then give you treats and snacks. So, I mean, do we have to do that, or is that just like hyper efficiency? I'm not sure. We'll see what people think about it here. Another example, self-driving cars. They have really robust self-driving technology, and the cars almost communicate with the stoplights. They communicate with the buildings around them so that they can navigate the roads and know their surroundings. We don't really have that here. We have maybe self-driving, but we don't really have autonomous. And the Waymo that exist in California are laughingstock more than anything. So it's an interesting future where robots and the artificial intelligence sitting within that robot start to interact with our city, whether, from a workforce perspective, but then also when it clashes with people. There were some funny videos of these self-driving cars in China that would not stop under any circumstance. They know not to hit a person. They're trained for that, but if there's a crack in the road, it will just drive full force into that crack. A normal person might try to navigate around that or slow down a little bit. It's an unstoppable force. Like, it knows it has to get to its destination. There's not a person there, so let's go full speed and just see if we can get to our destination. Or another one, there was a truck that had spilled a bunch of oranges, I think, and the self-driving car just drove through this sea of oranges that had spilled over onto the road. And then people are pissed off. Like any normal person would go around, and the robot's like, nope, I haven't been trained to identify oranges on the road, so I'm just driving through it. I think we're going to see more funny instances like that in our cities. Hopefully we don't get to the point of like iRobot, though, where they start coordinating things and then taking over the city.
Very cool. No, Matthew, love it. Yeah, I wanted to maybe finish on this question here. I was reading about your backstory, and there's this really powerful one where you're essentially sitting in a hotel room in Dubai after a major industry event. I think you looked yourself in the mirror, you straightened your tie, and made a decision. What exactly crystallized for you in that moment? And yeah, maybe share a little bit about that experience, if you don't mind.
Well, one thing that all entrepreneurs know is how your personality shifts from running a company. You have such responsibility on your shoulders. You have to develop this confidence. You'll go through waves of imposter syndrome, and you're going to conflict with other people who may not be in that same trajectory. And that was what I encountered there, where there was a shifting power dynamic. There's no doubt that I'm one of the top voices in the industry now, and our company is taking off. That's great. That's great. But for folks that I've spent years with that did not have the same opportunity, it can cause resentment to accumulate and some frustration. And one thing that people immediately try to use against me is that I'm young. I'm younger, or at least I should say. And that was sort of the case of the situation where they said, well, you know what? I'm twice your age. I'm the serious practitioner here. Nobody's going to listen to you. What do you know? And I just did not want to stand for that. After 6 years, 2,190 days working on businesses and doing my time in the industry, I've learned a lot. And it's demonstrated by the fact that I get paid to fly all over the world and teach to institutions or guest lecture at universities, and just the success of our own company. So as I was straightening my tie, I was like, you know what? I've developed into the corporate executive that I wanted to become. I work with institutions. I'm proud of where I am as a founder. I'm not going to let other people cast their insecurities onto me and try to bring me down to that level. That's what that shifted. It took a long time to get here, because when you are running a startup, everything fails. And you start to think, am I failing? Am I a failure? And people will capitalize on that. They'll say, exactly, you didn't know what you were doing. That's why you have to listen to me. But I did not want that to be the case. And so I looked myself in the eyes and I said, you know what? I think this is an inflection point. I know who I am now, and I'm going to go out there and build.
Love it. Love it. Very inspirational, Matthew. I want to thank you once again for your time on this. Thank you all for checking in, and people who check this out in the future. That's all she wrote. Yeah, we'll bring this, Matthew. Would love to have you back on a future episode, and yeah, keep telling the story. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Short and sweet. This is great. Thank you so much, Sonny.